Dun, 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 dun.
Hello.
Okay, go ahead.
All good?
We're live.
Okay. All right. Then we're good.
I'm Doc. I have with me tonight Bill Witzel. And what we're going to talk about is the Williams System 11 reset mod. A lot of times these Williams System 11s, they reset section kind of gets flaky and they do weird stuff. Bill's going to talk about the symptoms of what it does, and then we're going to show you how to do it. And I have a list of parts that you're going to remove in order to do it, the benefits of doing it, and all that kind of good stuff. And we're going to show you a little bit, we'll show you it running on a Williams System 11 test rig. I built this test rig not to sell, not to promote anything. I built this to make it easier for my broken self to work on System 11 boards. This is a Pinbot MPU running Bad Cat ROMs. I chose Bad Cats because of the display. It's real nice and easy to read. I like to be easy. I'm not cheap though. So go ahead and fire that up. And as you can see that it's up and running, and it thinks it's a Bad Cat's pinball machine. Sir?
Okay. Well, let me start with some basics first. Maybe people are scratching their head going, what is he talking about reset? What the heck is that? Anybody knows some basic CPU architecture? So basically what a reset section is a CPU, your processor. It sits there at rest, doesn't know what's going on. There's your ROMs, which has your code. And so if there's actually pin 40 on the 6802, 6808s, that is called the reset line. So what happens is when power comes into the board, there is a circuit here called, it's an old antiquated circuit called RC, resistor capacitor. So there's resistors and capacitors that basically stabilize the voltage, the 5 volts coming in. When everything's okay, turns on the transistor, and then what it does is reset tells the CPU, hey, go. And the CPU says, all right, I'm running. And it starts running the code and doing its thing. System 11s, little things that you don't really know that are causing the reset type issues is you fire it up, you got no sound, you turn it on, the sound goes, makes weird noise, and then all of a sudden you turn it off, turn it on, it works fine, right? Doesn't know what it's doing. It's not getting a clean 5 volts. I have a taxi. Taxi would commonly, basically the bell would go off, and then it wouldn't boot. And turn it off, turn it back on, it worked fine. So I was trying to find out how to fix this. If you've worked on System 80s, System 337s, anything like that, there's a lot of documentation on how to do this using what's called a DS1811. It's a Dallas chip. So remember, we've changed in technology here. All these components here that make up this RC circuit, now a tiny $1.29 integrated circuit that looks like a transistor can handle all that. Make sure the voltage is at level, make sure it's all good, resets the circuit nice and clean, beautiful. Finds a problem, it'll shut it down.
So wait a minute, Bill. What you're saying is that the reset circuit, what it does is it holds everything until your 5 volts becomes stable.
Correct.
To run the board.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Right?
Yep.
Cool.
And it all happens instantaneous. You don't see it so fast. But anyway, so those are physical symptoms you see of that. And like I said, I had a number of these pins doing this, so I know there was a solution. Kind of messed around with it, talked to Doc, we came up with something here and it, put this thing together and on the System 11s. Because I have actually System 11s at my house that if you've ever worked on these or you get one out of a board, here's the batteries, right? Where does the battery leak? All the way down here. That was my first System 11. You have to replace all this and it just gets bad. And all these components here go bad. Why do we replace all these resistors, all these transistors, all these pieces? You put it back together and you got a 50-50 chance it works because all these traces are screwed up and there's all kinds of problems. And then you just, then you got to check 20 components to figure out what's going on versus you can $1.29 part, put it in there. And then you got nice and consistent working the whole time.
Well, I got another question. Let me throw this out there.
Sure.
We're trying to stabilize the 5 volts and the reset section, all that does is hold it, right? Until it makes the 5. What does the reset run on?
That's an interesting question. What? Oh, wait. What do you? Okay.
That runs on 12 volts, right?
I know where you're trying to go here. Yes. One of the neat things about this
what else runs on 12 volts?
The system, if you're bench testing a system 11 board or a system 9, you need to have ground, 5 volts, 12 volts, 5 volts and 12 volts. Well, if you look at the schematic, the only thing that needs 12 volts is the reset circuit. It takes 12 volts, regulates it down to 5 volts, and then cleans it up and then does its thing. If you remove that and do something like this, your board can run on 5 volts. You don't even need 12 volts to it. Easier to bench test, and why run 12 volts to your machine? To the board, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need it anymore. It just takes a lot of old antiquated things out. The boards are more reliable. Trust me, I know I beat the snot out of mine, and it's been a lot better. I turned it on, it's just a beautiful, just like that you saw, it just started right up. No booming, banging, bonging, speakers going off, and weird sounds, and people wondering what just happened because their pinball's possessed. But
another interesting thing that you might be seeing on this Pinbot board that most people don't normally see, and that's a mod, lithium battery modification. And what transpired there was I work on a lot of video games, and in the Williams video games, they have the same problem with the batteries leaking acid and destroying the boards. And a long time ago, somebody went, hey, let's do a lithium mod. Put a lithium battery on there, it will never leak acid and destroy your boards. Bill and I were discussing the removing these and transporting the battery packs off board.
Well,
and, that's a real pain in the ass.
Let me come back on you a bit. Why do we think about this? What's the problem of the remote battery is great, right? But what's the problem with the remote battery?
You got to mount it someplace.
Okay, and then what's
the
next problem?
And then it's going to leak on something else.
What's the other problem you have? So now you got to work on your board.
Yeah. Now you've got to
so now
remove the
settings,
remote battery.
You remove your
lost
board.
all your settings.
Oh, your buddies are pissed off because, well, you just reset all the high scores. Oh, yeah, you meant to do that. I don't know how many times I've heard that. I got the high score and you reset the board. Dude, I had to pull it out and do something with it. But anyway.
So in one of our sober moments that we happened to be together, and we said, well, wait a minute. This runs on the same power, same setup as a standard Williams video game, Defender, Moon Patrol, well, Moon Patrol's IRAM, but Stargate. I said, why don't we just lift mod it? Next thing you know, this guy's got so many lift mods out there, it's crazy. He loves them. They work great.
And they'll tell you that
one coin cell battery.
They'll say, oh no, they're rated at 4 volts, 3.6 volts.
Yeah, rated at 3.6 volts.
Fine.
It won't hold anything. That's bull. It works great.
All mine have been in there for more than 2 years, and I have, well, heck, the pin sat for a year. Out on the floor right now.
Yeah.
Didn't lose the settings. So, quick thing here. How do you know possibly what's going on with this? You can check this with a voltmeter, but you won't be able to see it. If you don't have one of these and you actually work on boards, a logic probe is a cheap investment for you. You're like 10 bucks. If you pay more than 20 bucks for a logic probe, you got ripped.
Well, unless you got
all
one
a
of
logic probe does is basically it's got 2 arrows on it. I wish I could show this a little bigger.
It's got a green arrow and a red arrow.
It's got a red arrow. One says high, one says low. Well, those are your logic levels, okay? Logic level is 3 volts, 3.6, 3.8 volts to about 5 volts. Yeah. That is considered high. That's a 1 that says, hey, I'm on, okay? It's pretty much on or off. Low is less than that 3 volts or lower, or grounded, which is low, 0. So remember, the reset section is going to go low, 0, to high, like that. And it's going to be clean. It should not flutter. That's where a logic probe is great, because you can see what the LED's doing. If it goes dee-dee, you're like, okay. And then it goes dee-dee-dee, that's it. That's what happens. That's bad. It should never do that on a reset. It should be nice and clean. And I'll show you. So I have my logic probe hooked up to the board here. I got ground and 5 volts. That's all you need. Pin 40 on the 68. This is just about everything Williams does. The 6802, 6808, 68 blah blah. Pin 40 is your reset. So see if I can kind of show you this here. You put your logic probe on pin 40, you turn it on, and it goes right to a high. You might see it go low and then high. That's basically the power supply firing up. These actually kick in a lot quicker, the newer circuits here, the newer ICs here that do that. If it, like I said, if it ever just kind of does this jump, I wish I had a board that I could show you that did that, but it would just kind of, it'll jump, it flutters. You know, and you can see that change. That right there is what I'm talking about. Is like, it's not quite working right. Now, also keep in mind as to why the sound card doesn't boot, et cetera, is because there's multiple processors on these, right? There's one circuit here, that's a CPU and ROMs. Then you have the sound circuit, which is CPU, ROMs. Then you have the audio board, which is CPU, ROMs. The funny thing is they all start up at the same time, and they get that same circuit. So if it doesn't quite get it, it's fluttering. Okay, this board didn't boot, but this one did. Well, now I have no sound. That's why. So this gives them a nice consistent reset. So what we figured out here was this little section right here, which
On the left.
on the left here, it's kind of, bear with us here. But anyway, it's this section. This is a blown up portion of like this section right here, okay? And
we
it's
also
just
have
a
it
whole
on-
bunch of little components.
We also have it on this drawing as
There you go,
well.
right there. See
What
that
the
whole
components
cluster
are.
components
It's this
right there?
cluster right here.
That right there is the reset section, minus one or two little small pieces. And like I said, if it's corroded, you can just remove all those parts. If you have a problem like that you're seeing that weird stuff, you can just say, well, the heck with it. I don't need these parts. Take them out, buy yourself a $1.29 part, put it in there. One of the things I hate about modifying when it comes to boards and stuff like that is I don't like cutting traces. I don't like butchering boards and doing things like that, putting 20,000 jumpers on them, and it looks like garbage. I used to do this professionally, so, you know, you kind of be a stickler for that stuff, you know. So what we figured out here was there's actually, well, you're looking at the schematic, I'm not going to get into the details of that. There's actually a transistor. Remember, it looks just like a transistor. Q38 on a System 11 board is right there. One leg of Q38 is going to the reset section, which goes to the entire board, and all the other chips are reset. The other one is, the other two to go to nothing. If you look on the schematic, I mean, if you just pull the components out, they would go up off of resistors and capacitors, and when you stick it in there in the same place, it doesn't go anywhere. But the only difference was that, well, it was backwards. So all you do is take Q38 and turn it around backwards, which I think he put it in here.
Yeah, it's right up at the top here. It's right here, Bill. No, you're missing it. Q38 is right here.
There you go. See, the marker here for the transistor shows you there's the flat face of it and there's the round face. It's just basically turned around.
What I did here, this is actually a picture of this board that is on the test rig. Excuse me. So this DS1811 is backwards as per the silk screen, and that's what you're seeing here. What you're seeing right here, if I can back up enough, these three traces right here are how it wires across in the back, the exact bottom side. Please ignore this one trace of wire right here.
Mickey Mouse.
What happened is, in removing components, I actually tore up a trace. And so in tearing up that trace, I made a good solid fix with a piece of 30 gauge wire.
Okay, so if you're not Doc, you don't butcher your traces up like this and have to use jumper wires like we were trying to prevent in the first place. But
hey, I can pull chips all day long and not tear up a trace. I pulled one resistor and it ate
happens.
the trace.
I'm flinging you poo, bro. Anyway, so if you turn that transistor around now, looking on the back side of the board, it's like, okay, now I got these legs hanging out. Remember, I have two traces that go nowhere, okay? So actually, I figured out you can actually just bend these legs over to the appropriate places, solder them down, and that's it. You're not butchering the board. You're not tearing anything up. If you don't like it, clip it off and walk away. But I tell you right now, you won't ever go back.
That is the very nice thing about this.
Ever since I did it on System 80s, I used the mod on System 80s that they've had out there. I can't remember the guy's name, but he did that. I'm like, that's ingenious. But there's some of them they haven't done. And, you know, but that's...
This information can also be found on Pin
Wiki?
Wiki for System 7.
Yep.
It
System
can
80s.
also be found for the Bally-35s and the Bally- what came before the 3?
Yeah, the Bally's is very
17s.
common too, because the same thing in the Bally's, the Dash 35. Is that what it is? The bottom
Yeah.
here is the battery.
The battery was always at the
And
bottom.
then all the reset section, it's a cluster of resistors,
Always eaten with
capacitors, just
acid.
like that, sitting right here, and that all gets rotted out.
Yeah.
Well, why replace all that garbage? You can put a nice, simple, cheap chip in there, and actually you will get a cleaner, more precise reset. It will actually do it the right way.
Now the actual DS1811, they're kind of spendy. They're
$1.29.
about anywhere from $1.59 to $2 each.
Oh, no.
If you actually go to the MCP 130-450, which is a compatible equivalent,
Ed Great Plains sells those.
yeah, you can get them from
Yeah,
Ed at Great Plains Electronics.
If you search DS, that's how I found out about it.
You can
Search
also get them.
DS1811, he
You can
pulls
also
that
get
up.
them from Mouser. You can get them on eBay. I found them for about 20 cents. I bought like 100 of them. I had to buy 100 of them to justify the shipping of $6.99.
Yeah, 28 components. You can get rid of 28 components and put one little piece in there and be done with it. Now, something interesting that I've run into. I know we're trying to digest a lot of stuff here, but it should be on PenWiki, right? You said it's on PenWiki yet or not?
For the System 7, the Bally-35.
So the 11, I promise you, I will put it on the PenWiki. I've been saying I'm going to do it, but I just haven't.
This is not on PenWiki yet.
But I will put it on there. We have the notes.
Bill
for
will get it. I
will get it,
wrote the
promise.
notes,
But
and they're legible.
the things are, there's actually a couple components here, a couple of diodes and 2 resistors and 1 transistor on here. If you do that kind of thing, you do this mod and maybe you decide to do it yourself. If you get like a U25, is it U25?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a U25.
U25 RAM failure. Okay.
CMOS error. It's a CMOS error.
Yep, you basically missed a transistor and 2 resistors, 3 resistors that go on there. Just look on the circuit and the reset and you'll see the line goes all the way around, comes around, and then it goes on to another page of the schematic, so you go back that way. And yeah, that is actually right off one of the memory addresses on there, and so the memory doesn't actually initialize it.
Yeah, it's the 6116 CMOS error is what that is.
So, are there any questions, first of all? Did I confuse everybody, or?
Another fun thing about this reset section that a lot of people don't realize is these 3 caps right here, they do go bad. So
oh, yeah, you had that on your pen.
we had Bill, when Bill and I first did this reset mod together, he had done several of these. When we first did it together and I was writing the documentation for this, we were using Bill's switching power supply hooked up to the test points. The test points are not the same as hooking up to the header. They feed differently. So when we hooked up to the test points, we had bypassed these 3 caps. So we had it on the bench, hooked it up to the test points, everything worked great. I took it back out to the shop, installed it in the customer's machine, didn't work. Wouldn't fire up at all.
He's ready to shoot me, of course, you know. But
Wait a minute, we had this working on the bench, and I'm like,
What'd you
what
do to me?
the hell? And then it dawned on me, I had the same problem with a Bally-35 Squawk and Talk out of Flash Gordon. A friend of mine had said that it didn't work. He sent it to me. I ran it through on the test bench, through the test points, worked perfect. I sent it back to him. He says, dude, it doesn't work. And I went, wait a minute. I pulled up the SCAT. The test points are ahead of this entire capacitor network. And he had probably 3 bad caps in there. And so that's how I knew where Bill and I had made our mental mistake. So yes, you can power the board from the test points. It's always best to go from the header.
are there any questions, or?
Does this work on a system 9 too?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, it can. I haven't actually directly done one on that, but the System 9 reset is almost identical. I can't see the components are the exact same. If I had one in front of me, yes, you could do that on System 9, definitely. Because they use the same thing pretty much all the way through.
You say you can also do it for System 7?
Yep.
Yes.
System 3 through 7s, that's actually on PenWiki. They show you how to do that. It's clipping a couple of resistors. I think replacing 1 resistor. You need a pull-up resistor on it. And yeah, they already have a documented method for that one. Gottlieb System 80s, there's one. Like I said, the Bally-35.
Bally
it's all about Bally
-35,
boards.
which is also the Stern 200. The
Well,
dash
the WPC, he
17s.
came to me on that, and I'm like, I think they already have one. Sure enough. WPC, if you look below the ASIC, there's a little transistor thing you job. You look at that up right there, that's your reset. That's what they finally went to now that the technology can do it. And that's the great thing about this. You're using modern technology to run. You're getting rid of the old stuff, you know. We know that points and condensers don't work great in cars or as reliable as, you know, HEI or, you know. So we can convert to that and do it. It's almost the same kind of thing.
So one more little piece of fun that we're going to share with you, and Bill doesn't know this because I didn't tell him.
Wow, throw me to the bus.
Yeah, well, I did tell you about it. I just didn't tell you that we were going to share it. Most people don't know that I happen to be one of the world's best Williams power supply rebuilders, and this is for video games and not necessarily pinball machines. I rebuild these power supplies all the time, and the 5 volts was never adjustable. If you were here in the previous seminars, we talked about Bob Roberts. Bob Roberts has a hack to make the Defender power supply 5 volts adjustable. And a few years back, I decided that Robotron, Joust, Bubbles, Sinistar, all the other Williams should be adjustable, because when they drop below about 4.75, the games become erratic. They lose the high scores, they crash, reboot, crash. It's just not a fun experience. And so by taking a 5K pot and installing it into this power supply, it makes the 5 volts adjustable. The other fellow that was here with me earlier, David Shoemaker, noticed that on the pin bot that we had, the power supply was running about 4.8 for the System 11. And he said to me, well, isn't that power supply adjustable? You know what that led to, right?
Light bulb moment.
Got to break out the scats and go, hey, wait a minute. If I put a pot right here, it's now adjustable. So by taking a 5K pot and installing it at R7 on either a Williams System 11 power supply or a Williams, let's see what, 11, 7, or 9, the 5 volts becomes adjustable.
What value pot?
5K.
5K pot?
5K pot
Nice.
at R7. And the R7 leads directly into the LM723 regulator chip that sits in the middle of that board. It can be a little tight, so you want to use a kind of a smaller pot. Generally, I use a 5K half watt. Haven't quite figured out which configuration is going to be the easiest and best, because there's a couple of big caps there and it's kind of tight. But now that pin bot sitting in the back of the room is no longer running at 489. Is it pin bot? No, it's Hyperball. They didn't do it to the pin bot. It's Hyperball. My bad. System 7.
5 minutes.
So.
Okay. Good.
That's just a little bonus fun stuff. And the reason that we can do these kind of fun things is, well, I'm retired. I have nothing to do all day long other than what my wife tells me to do.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. And everybody translates that into I have time to work on their stuff. So I work on games 24/7, 365, unless Mama tells me to do something else. And then I work on games somewhere else where she can't find me.
Are there any questions? Does anybody need clarification? Or, I mean, please, don't be afraid.
What size battery do you use for that lithium mod?
That's
the battery,
a
it's just the standard
2032.
CR2032.
Yep.
Standard computer battery, readily available.
Same thing. It's in the remote
cheap.
in most people's cars.
I get them, like that's the Radio Shack one right there is what that is. Just
Yeah.
I'm in a pinch, quick, I can go to Radio Shack if they're still around anymore. But you know, grab one. I pay $1.20 for it or $1.50 versus I can get them online for, you know, cheap and order 50 at a time. But
You know, if you only need one and you go to somebody like Bob Roberts, he'll charge you like $4 for a lift mod kit. And that's the battery and the holder. If you only need one, that's not a bad way to go. Okay, but where I do this a lot, and Bill does it a lot, we buy them in the 50s and the 100s. And we probably pay, I pay about 28 cents for the batteries. And those are Energizers. I don't use anything but Energizers. Not even Duracell, I use Energizer. And they run me about 28 cents. And the holders, they're a little more, they're about 36 cents, you know, when you buy them by the 100.
How long do they last compared to like the free?
like I said, I'm just trying to think here because
Well,
I
Bill's-
haven't actually worn one out yet.
Bill
I have not
says-
worn one out yet.
yeah.
But I can say that I had 4 pinballs sitting in storage, and I hate to say it, but yes, they were sitting in storage since the last time the show happened. So they sat in storage for a year.
That's because
And
Bill's
I pulled
clear
them out of the
coating other
show.
people's playfields.
Yeah. I pulled them out of storage, put them out here on for the show. Actually, it's Gorgar, Bad Cats, and I don't remember the other one.
Haunted
Doesn't
House.
matter. Haunted House, yes, those were
And
all
Black
mods.
Hole.
And neither one of those, every one of those machines fired right up. I didn't get any audit problems, nothing.
We don't exactly know what an average length is. I can tell you this, it is over a year.
And you should change your batteries once a year anyway, so
I can also tell you that your 3 AA's, if you've had them in more than 6 months, you're really risking battery acid damage. And you know, I have a friend, and he shall remain nameless. He has over $50,000 worth of A-list pins. By that I mean Medieval Madness, Monster Bash, Creature from the Black Lagoon. He brought me his CPU from his Medieval Madness. He was doing a lighting mod, and all of his lights quit working. And he thought it was because of what he had done. It was because when he moved the machine out and drug it across the floor, the vibration of dragging it across his carpet for about 18 inches took all of that acid and just activated it into his motherboard, and it was done. I fixed it. He took it home, played it for an hour, quit working again. Brought it back. I fixed it. Took it home, played it for an hour, down again. I told him that there's just, the traces are so small on the back of those WPC boards that I wasn't able to get the acid out from underneath it.
So just one quick thing here, I didn't really mention this here we've had a couple questions actually on the using the battery type mod. So how I normally do this is if you look at, well, almost all pinballs have this. There's 6 prongs on here, right? You got 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and they're basically in parallel. If you look at the traces, they're kind of like crisscross to each other, right? So the positive, negative, right? Normally one of these corners here, if you look on the back of the board or whatever, one of them is going to go to a diode. That's your positive, right? So take your positive side of the battery holder, you're going to have to just figure out what's going to be best, you know, what's going to fit best there. Take your battery holder, put on the positive, well, you know, normally it'll fit between 2 posts right here. This one actually with the Radio Shack battery holder fits just right next to the PIA, the 6821, and it works. Up here it's kind of tough because you're hitting all this other stuff. Well, basically, like I said, you're going to see kitty corner each other typically or across from each other. There's going to be, you know, the positive side, and then there's going to be one tied to another big trace, which is the negative side. And so normally I find whichever one works, put your positive side. Okay, the other one's not going to fit there, no big deal. Just solder your battery holder in there. Then at that point, you know that trace, 99% of the time, that trace you followed up is going to go somewhere over here. Well, I just use a 0 ohm resistor. Ground is over here. Just put a 0 ohm resistor, tie those 2 traces together, and there you go.
Y'all
Feel
know,
free to
y'all
come by
know
and
what
look
a
at this
0
stuff
ohm
and
resistor is,
ask
right?
questions or anything like that. a fancy jumper
zero
wire.
ohm resistor is a piece of wire.
But it looks cool.
But I buy the
got a
actual
little
zero
black
ohm
stripe on it.
resistors because I think they're cool.
It's got a black stripe on it.
And they cost a penny.
Any
So
other
unless there's any
questions,
question,
anybody?
feel free, come on up, take a look at the test rig, play with it, whatever.